Hey there folks, it's Blue here from Blue Bears Games, and this video, as promised, will be the upgrade guide for the Riders of Rohan Lord of the Rings Commander Precon. In yesterday's unboxing video, I had mentioned that out of the box, this deck looks pretty good. That doesn't mean that it's perfect, but it needed less upgrade suggestions than the Food and Fellowship and Hosts of Mordor Precons. In fact, the previous two precons I did this for needed 21 and 22 upgrade suggestions to make them even playable, whereas this one, I only have 16 cards to suggest swapping in that will make it actually play very well. The direction I took for the upgrades I'm about to suggest are not to change the theme, but are to simply just show you some better options to advance the human tribal/typal theme with a couple of other little toys that should help make winning games with this deck a little easier. Rather than ramble on any longer about it though, let's just get to it. Real quick though, before I get to the guide, I want to take a moment to remind you that if you're in the market for a pretty awesome deck box, playmat, or sleeves, please visit our sponsor at arcane-fortress.com and take a look at what they have. Their deck boxes are some of the best that I've ever used, and you can even get an additional 5% off of your entire purchase if you use discount code BLUEBEAR at checkout. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. I'll start this off by telling you which cards I'd suggest taking out. As usual, this precon had too many lands, so I'd start by removing 2 plains and Exotic Orchard. I'll be replacing the 2 plains with good utility lands in just a little bit though, so I didn't cut the lands by much. Then I'd remove Humble Defector, Zealous Conscripts, and Denethor Stoneseer because there are way better human creatures out there that this deck can benefit from. After that, I'd remove Lost to Legend, Unbreakable Formation, 4th Eorlingus, Increasing Devotion, Visions of Glory, Sunset Revelry, Call for Aid, and Taunt from the Rampart because I want to replace some of these effects with cards that do the same things repeatedly or just don't think the effects they provide are powerful enough in the Commander format. And finally, the last 2 cards I'd remove are Court of Ire and Fealty to the Realms because they just don't fit the theme very well. That's 16 total cards that I would suggest removing so you can make room for some cards that I feel would really help make this deck play better and add more synergy to the human tribal/typal theme. Now, before I show you the cards that I would swap in, I want to remind you that if you want mana fixing land upgrade suggestions, check out the upgrade guide video that I did for the Forces of the Imperium Warhammer 40k Precon. At the top of your screen is a link that you can use to go to the video, and I have timestamped the guide in the description of that video so you can easily find it after you're done watching this video. I'll start by showing you the 2 lands that I had mentioned earlier. Up first is a card called Minas Tirith, which I've mentioned a couple of times before and for good reason. Not only can it come into play untapped, but also, White has historically had issues with card draw in Commander, and this land can help with this issue enough to warrant becoming an auto-include in any White deck that's combat-based. The other land is called Castle Ardenvale, and I like it because it can enter play untapped as well, but it also has an activated ability that mid to late game can create human tokens repeatedly for you that can't be countered easily, and won't waste precious card spots that you need for other things. Next, I want to show you 7 creatures that this deck can heavily benefit from adding. First up is Esper Sentinel. Not only is Esper Sentinel a human that will benefit from all the cards that will buff its stats, but it will also help you draw cards throughout the game, which those buffs will help make it easier for you to do. I'd also suggest adding Devout Chaplain because it can be repeatable targeted artifact and enchantment removal for such a low cost in this build. Next, I'd add in a card called Adeline Resplendent Cathar for many reasons. The mana cost to stats and abilities ratio is off the charts, and all 3 abilities it has are relevant to what this deck wants to do. The same could be said for Thalia's Lieutenant as well. While not as good as Adeline, the Lieutenant can help make herself and your horde of angry humans big enough to be lethal quickly if left unchecked. The next card is a new card that's only obtainable in the Fallout set, and is called Paladin Elizabeth Taggarty. I liked this card because it helps you draw cards while also providing a way for you to put more creatures onto the battlefield without having to cast them. Its ability gets around counter magic, which is a huge upside for most players. Another creature that I'd suggest to add because of its ability to help you draw cards is called Aurelia the Law Above. One of the cooler things about this Aurelia is that both of its abilities work even if your opponents are doing the attacking and not just you. Not being a human hurts this card a little, but a 5 mana 4/4 with flying, vigilance, haste, and can help you draw cards while also being able to deal damage to each opponent seems like a pretty good trade-off to me. And the last creature that I want to show you is called Faramir, Prince of Athelion. I'm personally a big fan of making my opponents choose between what they think is the lesser of two evils, and this card does a nice job of that. Whatever they choose to do, this card will give you either more cards in your hand or more humans on the board, so either way, you get something that you want. Now, as far as instants and sorceries go, I only had one that I could find that I felt was a perfect fit for this deck, and it's called Everything Comes to Dust. I wanted to add a board wipe for this build that could be one-sided, but since this deck uses both token and non-token creatures, I couldn't find anything that I liked until I remembered this was printed recently. Simply just convoke this spell with one of your humans, and most of your creatures will be safe. Just hope that nobody else is also playing humans though, because theirs will be safe too. Next, I want to show you 3 enchantments that will end up being better fits for this deck than some of the sorceries that I suggested to remove. The first of the 3 is called Impact Tremors. Since this deck will have a bunch of creatures entering the battlefield through different means, I figure why not take advantage of that by also dealing damage to each opponent in the process. Impact Tremors should help end games for you if you can't attack your opponents for some reason. The second enchantment that I'd add is called War Leader's Call. Just like the Impact Tremors, this card is an extra way to deal damage to each opponent, but now it also is a permanent buff for all of your creatures as well. It's almost the perfect card for this build, honestly. The third and final enchantment that I'd suggest adding is called Outlaw's Merriment, and is the reason that I suggested removing the one-time spells that create human creature tokens. It's a one-time investment of mana that can keep pumping out hasty human tokens for you over and over, and each option has additional benefits attached to the tokens, especially the third one. Now the last card that I'll suggest to add before I show you an infinite combo for this deck is an artifact called Horn of Gondor. I would add this for similar reasons to Outlaw's Merriment, repeatable human token creation. Since this deck is a human tribal / typal deck, you should have no issue pumping out at least 5 or more tokens every turn with this bad boy out. Finally, we come to the combo section for this guide. While I found an infinite combo that used Eowyn, I didn't like it as much as the one I'm about to show you. The combo that I would suggest to add to this build specifically uses Thraben Doomsayer paired with Intruder Alarm, and to make it a game-ending combo, you would use one or both enchantments I suggested earlier, Impact Tremors and/or War Leader's Call. This combo is simple, yet extremely effective at closing out games, and each piece on its own is relevant to the build. How it works is you simply need all 3 cards on the battlefield, and then to activate the Doomsayer to start the loop. When the token that you create from the Doomsayer enters play, it will trigger the Intruder Alarm, untapping all creatures in play, and you just rinse and repeat from there, creating infinite 1/1 white human creature tokens. Having either Impact Tremors and/or War Leader's Call in play will result in infinite damage to each opponent as well, ending the game in victory for you. See? Simple, yet extremely effective. And that, my fellow Spellslingers, was my upgrade guide for the Riders of Rohan Lord of the Rings Commander Precon. While everything that I just suggested may not make this deck competitive, it sure will make it a lot better and way more fun to pilot. I haven't opened the Elvish Council Lord of the Rings Precon yet, but so far, this deck seems like the best of the bunch. I'll be opening that deck up next week though, so please be sure to join me for that to find out which deck I feel is better. So that's it for this upgrade guide. Let me know what you think of the changes in the comments section. As always, thank you for watching, and if you could, please do me the favor of giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so yet, sharing this out to anyone you think would enjoy it or get anything out of it, and visiting our sponsor at arcane-fortress.com and using discount code BlueBear for an additional 5% off of your order if you decide to purchase anything from them. Now go and watch some of my many other videos to tide you over until next week, where I'll be doing this all over again for the 4th and final Lord of the Rings Commander Precon, Elvish Council.